Okay, before we begin our meeting tonight, please join me in pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioner districts of the county. The purpose of the board is to review applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by this board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. All 6 questions must be answered in the affirmative to grant the request. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in granting the variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. All right, our first item on the agenda tonight is Timothy Backus, Shad D. Giuseppe, no address, no property address, application for an after-the-fact variance to continue the retaining wall and grade and fill within a bluff located in Lot 17, Marina Additions in Two Rivers Township. Will the applicant come forward, please, and sit up at the table in front here and get a microphone over to you and state your name for the record, please.
My name is Shad D. Giuseppe.
Okay, thank you, Shad. Okay, Amy, are you ready?
I am ready, Mr. Chair.
Me too.
Okay.
I think
great.
everybody else is too.
Okay, well then let's do it.
All right.
All right, this is an after-the-fact variance request for grade and fill and excavation and a retaining wall within the bluff located in section 26 of Two Rivers Township. The ordinance references for this request is section 706E and then F5 of the Mississippi Headwaters Board. Here's a plat map of Two Rivers Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here is the variance request received from the applicant. And then here's a site drawing also provided by the applicant. And a site photo, and this depicts what was going on the site prior to the work. And that was provided by the applicant. And then here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then here's some oblique imagery, and I think this is like a 1 in a million thing, but the flyover was happening when the excavation was occurring. So you'll see that on the shot. And then here's some site photographs taken at the viewing on the 24th of September. So again, the property is in section 26 of Two Rivers Township on the Mississippi River. This is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 5 acres and 330 feet wide. The property is 343 feet wide and 55,000 square feet. It is part of the Marina Addition subdivision, which was platted in 1984. The Mississippi Headwaters Board was established in 1980 and implemented a plan that has zoning jurisdiction within the Mississippi River corridor, and that was approved in 1981. The respective counties are responsible for administering the requirements of the plan. The applicant purchased the property in 2015, along with the contiguous lot on the south side of Great River Road. The lot has bluff conditions. The average slope is about 58%. Per the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance, excavation, structures, and impervious surface is prohibited within bluffs except for stairways, lifts, and landings. And then here is a aerial photograph of the parcel with the elevation contours on. The Mississippi Headwaters Board also prohibits structures except stairways, lifts, and landings. In addition, the Mississippi Headwaters Board does not allow placement of fill or excavated materials within bluff impact zones and prohibits the creation of finished slopes greater than 30%. In April 2021, Land Services received a complaint that excavation was occurring within the bluff, and Land Services staff verified the complaint was valid and served a stop work order. And so, let's see here. Here are photos from that site visit. And then here's the stop work order that was served. The applicant and property owner was on site and stated the area had been utilized as a farm dump in the past and that he was cleaning up the garbage embedded in the slope. He stated that an access road to the river was going to be installed along with a retaining wall to stabilize the cut for the road. A Land Services staff told the applicant that excavation and retaining walls within a bluff is prohibited and that it must be restored or a variance must be granted to keep the site as is. And then along with that, a first notice of violation was sent. And then here's a copy of that. The property owner attended a development review team meeting on April 26, 2021. And at the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the applicant, that the project began to remove trash from the hillside and that the applicant had spoken with a solid waste officer from the Public Works Department. A review of requirements and prohibitions within bluffs. More garbage is in the bluff. It hasn't been completely removed. And the discussion that you can install a stairway, lift, and landing for access to the river. Bluffs are a sensitive feature. Restoration would not require a variance. And recommendation to meet with the Soil and Water Conservation District and the shoreline specialist on site to review the site. After that, then a second notice of violation was sent in July. And so now we have this request, and the applicant is requesting an after-the-fact variance for the following: to continue excavation in the bluff to remove the remaining solid waste, complete the installation of the road / path within the bluff to the river, and install a retaining wall along the side of the path. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals for this request is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreland development, goal D1, and then the water plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 33 notices were sent. I received, actually, I'm gonna update that. I got 2 comments, and then I also have a email from the county engineer. So I'll start with the email from the county engineer. Just give me just one moment to pull that up. Okay, so this letter is in response to the variance application submitted by Mr. Giuseppe, which is scheduled to be heard before the Board of Adjustment on September 28th, 2021. Within his application, Mr. Giuseppe states several times that on separate occasions, a Public Works employee approved of his activities and even gave him approval for the retaining wall. I would like to provide some information as to what I believe occurred here. Mr. Perrins has retired from the department, so he is not available to respond to the statements being made. This department's involvement began when the Public Works Maintenance Superintendent noticed a pile of rocks and a roll-off box within the right-of-way at the location of the violation. The work was just beginning, and the superintendent spoke to the individual that was on site and informed him that he needed to move the rocks so they were further off the edge of the roadway. The superintendent also notified Mr. Perrins that there was a roll-off at the site and they were cleaning up some very old solid waste that had been dumped in a ravine. Mr. Giuseppe was not being required by Public Works to clean up this site, and Public Works was not there to enforce and or approve the cleanup. Mr. Perrin's visit to the site was to verify that the material was solid waste and that the roll-off company followed the solid waste ordinance and delivered the material to the Morrison County landfill. Following this contact, the Public Works Department received a call from Land Services inquiring about any project the department would have going in the area of the violation. Mr. Perrins spoke with Galen Gruber and conveyed to him that he had observed the removing of solid waste from the site. Mr. Perrins, in this conversation, conveyed that he had not approved any alterations or retaining wall construction undertaken at this location. Public Works staff do not review or approve projects relating to shoreland alterations. The project in question had started before Mr. Perrins even came into the picture by Mr. Di Giuseppe on his own accord without proper permits. So that is from the county engineer, Steve Bukowski. Then the other comments, I'm just gonna get back to my screen here. Okay, and the other comments, this one is from Maurice Gent, who stated he's a neighbor. He stated he is wondering what kind of access they are going to get to the river. He is worried and concerned that this will turn into a party place, that they can hear the noise from over a mile away. He is concerned that the road and path is going to be huge and that they are going to ruin the bank and aesthetic of the river. He does not want them to be able to bring vehicles down that road, and the neighbors are concerned with noise and partying. He would like to see the river bank kept intact with no vehicle access. He said he's concerned that if this gets granted, it will grow into a big problem and the owners will create a landing or a marina and a party place. And then I got also a comment from Shannon Gilb. She stated, "Hope you're doing well. We received the attached notice to continue a retaining wall." Let's see. We would recommend letting them continue with their retaining wall. We strongly believe any landowner should be able to modify their land. And that's from Shannon Gilb. So, Mr. Chair, those are all the comments. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions.
Thank you, Amy. This is time for you, the applicant, to respond to that, to add any details if you can think of any, before we go to the board with questions.
I guess the only thing I noticed we might be missing from the photos that were submitted or shown on the screen here would be the photos of the dumpster, how much garbage we actually did remove, which the members that showed up the other day observed in person, but it's quite a lot. And it's just since, probably 20 years worth, mostly from the 50s and 60s, we would estimate, since some of the license plates we found were dated in the 1950s and 60s. So there's a lot of solid waste and it happened to be in a ravine that was already cut in. So the excavating that was done primarily was removing the garbage, and in doing that, it made it a little deeper, so we filled the ravine in, and upon doing that, it turned into what it is now, more of a path. But everything that she was stated, I agree with. That was the order that it happened. And as I mentioned the other day, I was unaware or ignorant, I guess, to the fact that a variance was needed. In the beginning, it was just intended to be a cleanup of all the garbage that was there. Some pieces as large as automobile parts and washer dryers, et cetera. But everything else, I concur, was a pretty accurate statement of how it came about. So.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to add for the record that on September 24th, Clint, Dave, and myself and Sharon were on the site and visited. Marv?
I was on the site on September 25th, the following day there, and I did look in the dumpster and alongside it, and yes, there was a lot of garbage that was removed.
I did not make it to the site.
Okay, all right.
Just going to remind the board to speak into your microphone so we catch that all on audio. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that Shannon is out, and is this a good time for everybody to have Shannon come forward and give Soil and Water's perspective and history with this issue?
Shannon, go ahead to the podium. There should be a microphone there.
Hello. My name is Shannon Wetstein. I'm the district manager for the Morrison Soil Water Conservation District, and here to answer any questions that you might have about the site. I have not been to the site, but have reviewed the soils for the site, and then obviously the slope and kind of that conditions that might create on the Mississippi River. This soil is considered in our office what we consider a highly erodible soil, HEL soil, Monaga loamy sand, as you could see in the pictures. It looked very sandy. I mean, there's once it's disturbed, it's really hard to reestablish that structure again, especially, you know, in the case of trying to clean up something. Basically, you're disturbing that whole soil structure, and it's going to be years and years again before that can be reestablished through vegetation, root structure, all of that. So in the case of excavation within soils like that in a slope, obviously it would never be something that we would recommend, just because reestablishing any sort of base to that slope is going to be very difficult. Now, what the applicant has done as well is try to create some benches in there by having, you know, the retaining wall. Reviewing pictures, it looks more like the structure of the retaining wall is to create access more so than creating any sort of bank stabilization. Obviously, you were trying to do both, right? But more for access reasons. You know, in my opinion, what that does is creates a channel for water to flow, because the water is going to get to the river. That's the whole purpose. But by creating the roadway, walkway, ATV trail, whatever, and the design of the rock placement, it is going to create a channel for the water to flow over. And especially if it's heavily used, it's going to be hard to establish that vegetation. Looks like there was some vegetation establishment that's happened now at the site, but still moving any equipment over that on sandy soils is, of course, going to make it difficult for that to hold if there is a big rain event or normal rain event, even in that case. So staff from my office was out at the site initially with Galen Gruber and met with the applicant and talked about opportunities that we would have through our office to help revegetate. Of course, with the case being in violation status, we typically do not offer cost share in those instances, but we could offer technical assistance. If down the road there is no violation, there is a possibility that we could work with the landowner to establish native vegetation in that area. But again, it is a very difficult site. Excavation within a bluff, within very sandy soils on the Mississippi River, which, you know, has you know, all the natural features that we're trying to protect in our office and with Morrison County. This site makes it very difficult for me to make any sort of recommendation that an after the fact would be considered. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions at this time.
Thank you. Board?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Clint.
Okay, Shannon, surprisingly, for as dry as it is, I was quite shocked to see how much vegetation was regrowed there, so that was good. So in your professional opinion, do you think leaving the retaining walls in is better, or do you think we'll do more damage tearing it out and putting it back as far as erosion?
That's a great question. The site's already been heavily disturbed with, you know, the removal of the trash that's been in there. So the soil structure's already been damaged. at this point, removing the retaining wall, in my opinion, is going to be the best for a long-term solution because you're not setting a precedence to allow retaining walls in sensitive bluff areas. But also, at this point, there's an opportunity to do it correctly, which means taking that out and blanketing it after it's been seeded. The retaining wall, like I mentioned, the way it was designed is more to aid for a path to get to the river. And so, again, my concern would be the retaining wall, if left in place, is going to create sort of a channelized way for water to get down to the river instead of sheet flowing evenly over the land like it would have prior when the vegetation was all intact. So, does that answer your question?
Somewhat. So you don't think there's no way to modify what's done? So your recommendation is to tear it out, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess, out of consistency and fairness with the ordinance and out of long-term maintenance, anytime you're installing rock and using that to try and stabilize a bank this steep, you're going to have issues over time. And I'm sure the applicant would probably be able to maintain it. It seems like a very qualified operator, but your next landowner, whoever owns it, may not have any sort of means or knowledge of how to stabilize that again. It's going to be a huge issue.
Okay, so then one more question and I'll be done. So let's say that there's a neighbor down the road that has this similar garbage problem. What would your recommendation be on that as far as cleanup? Just leave it?
My property, we've got the typical farm garbage pit too, right? I think a lot of these old farm sites did. Unfortunately, it was like gone forever as long as you threw it over the side and didn't see it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, in my garbage pit, and I don't know about the applicants, but it's beer cans and old, containers. It's not like it's stuff that might be heavily contaminated that could really leach into the Mississippi River. Now, I could be completely wrong, but I'm assuming it's probably, maybe found some washers and dryers and some old cream cans or something, but I'm guessing it's probably not stuff that you have a buried fuel tank, In that case, work with the MPCA, get the site properly mitigated. And again, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience with these old farm sites, but the applicant can speak to that more.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to make a couple comments. I'm assuming for those who have viewed this property, when you looked at it, that bluff or hillside, it looked higher than towards the road, like it was tapered towards the road. I don't know if your staff informed you that, and when you had stated that it'd be washing down towards the river, it looks like it would be running more so towards the rain or towards the road. And as sandy as it is, it looks like that should be absorbed quite well in there. And that's why I'm a little concerned about removing this rock and starting over if you're not going to do more damage than just leaving it. And this roadway only goes down, 1/3 of the way to the river would be my guess?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I haven't been on site. You guys have. Obviously, that does play into the slope. But again, in my opinion, the soil structure has already been disturbed at this point. So if the decision is to leave it, the repercussions with that are, as you know. removing it at this point isn't going to do any more damage than has already been done, because you would, through Amy and her staff, be requiring the applicant to properly seed, vegetate, and use best management practices for erosion control. So it's up to you guys to, that would be my recommendation.
Question for Amy and you would be, if the applicant had chosen restoration versus a variance, what would the procedure have been? Would there have been oversight? Would there, okay.
Yep, Mr. Chair, we would have required, that probably would have been in tandem with the Soil and Water Conservation District and the shoreland specialist as far as determining what that restoration needed to look like, and then it would be done with oversight from both offices.
Okay, never allowed to do it on their own, an applicant, like that? I mean,
We don't go in and restore anything. It would be on the applicant to get it
but I
restored.
mean, not on his own, with his own engineering, his own
No,
design?
it would be, if anything, he would maybe be required to come in with the engineer, but it would be our review and approval.
Okay, all right. And both of your offices have the staff, the resources to help restore this site. Is that correct?
We do. Like I said, typically, we do not extend cost share dollars on something that is a violation, but we could offer technical assistance. And we do have our team of engineers as well that could help with this site. But
Mr. Chair, with the slope the way it is, it would be an engineered site. We'd require it to be an engineered site, and so we would more than likely tap the engineer through Soil and Water to help with this one.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, I have a tendency to agree that if the structure that's there is left, number one, it doesn't look natural at all. It isn't natural. It has done damage already, and it looks to me like it could just tumble down the hillside with the right kind of weather event. It does not look stable at all to me, and the intent of the applicant was a pathway. Hard to condition that you'd never use that as a pathway, if we left that. And it goes with the land. The other concern I have is, of course, we aren't the final decision in this. The Mississippi Headwaters is. Anything that goes from here as a recommendation that, that is not a denial, that approves some kind of a variance, would be overlooked by them, and I'm highly doubtful of what, if you look at their specific ordinance, natural settings, shoreline protection, the larger properties now, overuse of shoreland is very restricted in their language, in their ordinance. Yeah, so I guess at this point, if there's nobody else, is there anybody else on the board have a question? Go ahead,
Mr.
Brent.
Chair, I had a couple questions. You talked about the dumpster that's there, and I didn't have an opportunity to view that, but did you have a photograph of the dumpster?
Yeah,
With the items in it that's not covered here?
Mr. Chair, I had seen that photo, but I did not have it, so I had emailed Mr. DiGiuseppe and asked if he would resubmit it, but I didn't receive that, so I wasn't able to put it in the packet.
I didn't get that, I didn't see your email, but I do have it with me, if you'd like me to.
That's one that you took when you were out there? Yeah, if I just.
If you look at it, you better put it towards the audience.
Yep, I will need that as an exhibit, whatever you're viewing.
If those of you who the site, just from memory, what did you see in the
Can I keep these?
dumpster?
I'm gonna pass these.
Oh,
I'm gonna just pass these.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Then we'll be looking at the same.
Basically the same picture, so.
You need to speak in the mic if you're just gonna.
Excuse me, Mark? Or-
I'm just saying I'm marking these as exhibits and I'm gonna send them down your way so the computer can go back.
At
Then
some
have-
point, I wanted to speak with a soil and water person when we're
You'll have
done
to
with the
address me if you
question.
want to speak.
Oh, sorry, what?
Okay. Hold on until we get this
Okay,
passed.
I
out,
wasn't, I
please.
just saw that she sat down, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Be the same picture as there.
Okay, the rest of us saw it. Good for Brent to see that too. Go ahead, yeah, you had a comment to make? Chad?
Yeah, so regarding the, if you could show the picture of the before, please?
You okay standing there
That
for a
one.
while, Shannon? Okay.
My question is as we refer to it as a ravine, I don't know if that's a proper word, but to me, I'm just curious isn't that essentially, that was the natural state it was in, isn't that more of a channel than what we created as it's a funnel down at an angle? And it was a ravine and the water flowed right through the center of it, which is where the bulk of the garbage was, which included several containers partially filled with motor oil and different oil products, granted from years and years ago, but it was a mixture of things, but there was also some things that are far worse for the river than any change in soil or whatever, but that's one of my questions was that, as far as, doesn't that channel the water, like you were referring to? And then secondly, one of the questions was, or the statements you made regarding rain, just a normal rain or torrential type rain or a heavy rain. We did have a rain event just recently on the 28th where we received hail damage at our house and stuff as well, but it was several inches of rain that day and the structure withheld without any sort of washouts. But neighboring areas just beyond that were complete washed out just naturally. So the area that we disturbed held up better than nature itself. So I believe removing all of these boulders, it's gonna take all the vegetation that has since sprouted out, and we're gonna have to reseed it, the angle of it there too really just filled it in, and then the retaining wall held up the part, to the right here on that picture. But removing those boulders is gonna require an excavator to drive down the path that's really just been filled in of the ravine. It wasn't like we created a complete new path. So that's gonna get all tore up. The boulders are gonna be removed, it's gonna get tore up. So I'm just curious, what type of rain event would it take to cause, if the rain event we had on the 28th completely washed out areas right next to that were naturally not disturbed by me, you know what I mean? What kind of rain event are we talking about that it'd be worse? I feel that we made it better. It's not as quite of a funnel now, that's what I'm curious about, so.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Shannon.
it does look like the site was a bit of a mess when you purchased it and when you started working on it. I can see that. The big issue and why you're here tonight is because you did the work without asking first, right? So it's a hard lesson in owning property on a shoreline within a super sensitive area like a bluff. So, I'm not saying all that you've done is bad, but it also is something that, we definitely, when we talk to landowners every single day, I always have, like today 5 times probably, someone said, well, my neighbor did this. They put this retaining wall here. Why can't I do that? And to cut that off from hearing that over and over and over again, no, that is not normally permitted. That's not normally allowed. It's not a recommended practice from the state on down to our offices. So, I'm sure that the site was having some channelization. I'm sure that there was some erosion happening prior to you owning it. That rain event that you were talking about that your neighbors had erosion, you didn't, I think is great. You know, maybe the soil was compacted just enough or something, and there's just enough vegetation. But I do believe, you know, at some point that bank has been destabilized. You know, I've been to several sites on the Mississippi where they've basically had mudslides occur on their property on less steep banks than this. So it doesn't take much to destabilize soils, and whether the boulders are removed or not, it has already been undermined, and no matter what, moving forward, you're going to have to do it properly, reseed it, blanket the whole thing. It's going to be very expensive, so.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Board members, any other questions for Shannon? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, are we ready for public input?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, as we'll open up the meeting for public input for or against this variance request. Is there anybody that would like to speak at this time? I'll ask 3 times. Is there anybody that'd like to speak at this time? Is there anybody that would like to speak up on this request? As there is none, we'll close the public input part of the meeting. Okay, are you ready to go to the questions, or do we have some more
I have
discussion?
a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Clint.
Amy, in your staff report, you mentioned that there was a second notice of violation.
Yes.
Why did that occur, or what can you reason with that?
Because no corrective action of any kind had been done since April, and so that's just our normal progression of violations, that we send out that first notice and we give them a time frame to come into compliance, and if they don't, then we send out that second notice of violation. So that's why.
Okay. Chad, maybe you can answer that. So you got one notice of violation, and then you got a second one. Can you tell me what occurred with them two?
Well, I had spoken with Galen, and he told me the process, and then that we need to go through, since normally there should have been an application. Again, we did like Amy mentioned, we began on our own, and it was just, I assumed it was just gonna be a cleanup of what we saw on the surface, but as each piece we pulled out, it was larger than we thought, and so it led to filling that in, which led to the retaining wall in the path, which is only a third of the way down. But he had said that in order to get, you know, if it was to be approved or a variance, you have to go through a process. So we had the DRT meeting, and then the next step was where we're here now. And it just, the time frame and various, mostly financial reasons, I didn't put the nearly $1,000 for this meeting together. That was all it was. And I did speak with Galen, or through text or email or whatever, regarding that, and he said, well, we need to get going on that. And we got it done. He wanted it done before fall, so.
So did you stop?
Well, there was no more, there was
After
no
the
more.
first notice,
Oh,
there was no
certainly,
more?
yeah, we stopped.
It's just you didn't come in and take care of the clerical
Right, we didn't
stuff?
get the.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay,
Yes.
yep.
That's what it was. We just didn't have the next step done. I believe that's what Amy was alluding to as well. It wasn't that they came back and found
Okay.
more excavating done. That
Yep,
wasn't
and I
it.
think you mentioned that at our site viewing.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
All right, yeah, I was wondering too,
Okay.
because I don't remember getting the
Okay.
second notice but,
All
okay,
right, thank you.
thanks.
I have no more questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Just have a question with Amy. If this is denied and the applicant restores the bluff back to, as best he can, to where it was, and then would like to come in for I mean, he wants access down to the water. What would that process be? I mean, would,
Yep, he could permit a stairway, lift, or landing. So really and why those are allowed is it's recognized within the state shoreland rule and within Mississippi Headwaters Board that people that have riparian property ought to have access. A stairway, lift, or landing, though, generally floats over the landscape and can be installed with some pretty minimal disturbance. And so that would always be an option to permit something like that.
Okay, and if restoration had happened, would you grant any permits before that was completed, before that had healed up, before, yeah?
We don't have anything in our ordinance that prohibits us from granting a permit if you have an ongoing violation. It kind of, we certainly use our discretion as to what's going on the site and what we need to be doing in the order in which we would need to do it. So
Sure.
we would certainly work with the property owner on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is an after-the-fact variance, and we'll answer the questions as if we were asked to this variance before the fact, correct, gentlemen? All right. Would we have done this? I think the request before us is, perhaps the applicant should read it himself. Explain your request in detail. We have it in front of us, but I don't know if you have changed your request or what your request is today.
Oh, here we go. Okay, do you want me to read it or just state it in my own words?
Whatever best works for you.
Okay, I guess my objective or request would be to leave what's there as is with possible additions to make it, a happy medium to be acceptable and make sure it's secure. As you mentioned, you didn't think the boulders were that secure. I think they are, but whatever that would be, or if I do have to remove them, something in place. But I understand that the odds of me allowed to do the finish getting the large pieces of debris out via excavation, and then which would require a retaining wall to get the excavator down, in effect making a path, is probably not going to happen. As it was mentioned, it would create a precedence. Everybody would want that. But I would, as far as removing it, the boulders, and I'm hoping I can not have to do that, because it's going to require a lot more money, and also it's going to tear it up what's already vegetated. So what you had mentioned too, I guess phase 2 would be just probably a stairway lift and landing to get the rest of the way down. So then in effect, it wouldn't be that we created another access, or like one of the neighbors said, they don't want a party thing, I guess they said, but specifically they also mentioned another boat landing or some sort. It would still be just a stairway down. So I'm hoping to have as much left as possible, because from the way I feel, we just really filled in a ravine. It's just not that we changed the surface as much as it may appear. Especially, you guys saw how it looked. It is only raised a little bit, so I'm not sure what we need to remove exactly, other than the boulders.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So I have the slide up from the staff report, which is how we framed. So I'm just going to read that back to you, and you tell me if that's still the case. So to continue excavation in the bluff to remove remaining solid waste, are you still asking to do that?
Well, that would be great, but just listening to everybody talk, like you guys also mentioned, you're not even the final decision. It'd have to go through Mississippi headwaters.
Correct.
So my feeling is that's never going to happen. And so I would like that, but I don't want to take it to appeals or whatever, the U.S. Supreme Court, not, for an example. So that would be great if you guys all said, yeah, let's go for it, but I just don't see that happening.
And then the second one would be to complete the installation of the road and/or path within the bluff to the river. Is that still what you want them to consider?
That would go hand in hand with the excavating, so no.
Okay. And then install a retaining wall along the side of the path.
Right,
So-
not that either. Just leave it the way it is, and then add stairway, lift, and landing.
Okay,
to
so
the-
essentially, leave what you've got done is what
Right.
you're asking the Board of Adjustment to consider
Yep,
tonight?
yeah.
Okay,
and
no further excavation?
No further
no-
excavation, because I realize now that, what I should have learned in the beginning had I applied, and I made the mistake of assuming that the guy from Solid Waste Department knew what he was talking about, and he didn't give me permission, or he also didn't say either way. He just said, "You're doing a great job picking this up. I like the retaining wall." Those, his words, but he's not, as I understand, that's not his jurisdiction, so to speak. So, yeah, I'd just like to keep what we have as much as possible.
So, Mr. Chair, does that clarify it?
Absolutely, board.
For the board?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Because wouldn't returning it to its natural state technically, obviously I wouldn't want to do this, but it would be the garbage, you wouldn't want to return that either. I just, that's where I feel like there's got to be a happy medium. And I understand we don't want a precedence because all my neighbors would want to have, instead of a stairway, probably their own landing or whatever, whether it's a path or not, but an access other than stairway. So I understand now, but,
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
yep.
Okay, we're ready to go to the questions. The first question is the request in harmony with the purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Again, we're looking at this request as if it was before the fact. Okay, go ahead, Marv, lead us off, please.
Well, as far as cleaning up, you did that in good faith, and I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that. Digging in a bluff, highly sensitive, erodible area, not allowed. I don't think we'd like to see that. Where do we go from here? I can't give you a good answer on it, but I don't think either one of us, no one in this room probably liked anyone digging into that bluff, because we don't want any more contamination going down that river.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to add to question one?
Mr. Chair, I'd add. So, in our surface water goal, it states to protect, enhance, and maintain the quality of all surface waters in Morrison County lakes and rivers. And then objective B, it's ensure the land use decisions for the shoreline development take environmental impacts and climate change into consideration. So on the garbage removal, I think he's following what them goals are, okay? But putting a retaining wall in probably wouldn't be. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, trying to do something good in the fact that you're doing something bad. So you just gotta weigh out which one's more important, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything to add? I guess the thoughtful and deliberate part is, hindsight's 20/20. It was a big project, and boy, several people should have probably known that this was not a good idea. I think the applicant, like you said, acted in good faith, wanting to clean up, but also he had some self-interest there in designing his own approach down to the river. It's hard for me to imagine that being a good idea, even without the trash there. That's a dangerous slope. An old guy like me, I don't know if I could make it down to that river. It certainly does not protect the natural resources, the things that have been done, and it was not done in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. So, if nobody else, we'll go on to question number 2. Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent, could you start us out on that question?
Sure. It doesn't seem reasonable to me to change a bluff that's at a 58% grade, I guess, at that point, and create a road or a trail or a walkway down to the river. Not having been there, I'm going to defer some of my comments to the other board members.
Okay. Anybody else like to add to that? I guess I'd just like to add that the Mississippi Headwaters doesn't allow grades beyond 30%, and this is pretty much double that. So not a reasonable manner to go about gaining access to your shoreline.
Can I,
Other additions? Okay. Question number 3, will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I start that one. There are no retaining walls in the bluffs. Nothing for purposes of access, no trails allowed. Only a specific set of stairs as ordinance allows. So the request to keep the retaining wall, in my opinion, does not maintain the essential character of the locality. Anybody else want to add to that?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
I think we heard from Soil and Water talking about the drainage and the creation of this channel for the water to flow down rather than to cascade has presented a problem to that bluff. I think that needs to be noted here.
Thank you. Okay, ready for question 4? Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint, can we start with you?
No, it's not unique to the property. All along that whole neighborhood, along the whole river frontage there, it's basically the same type of grade and bluff. So I wouldn't think there's a practical difficulty unique to this property. I don't know what the practical difficulty is, other than maybe just cleaning up the garbage. He disturbed the soil, so he tried to fix it. But I don't know if that's a practical difficulty, but no, it's not unique to the property. There's a lot of property shoreline all the way down the road that's similar. Maybe not with the garbage, but similar grades and slope.
And similar wishes to access the shoreline. Anybody like to add to that? Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave, can you start us out on that one?
You know, we're talking about the variance for the boulder wall, and that variance is not created by actions other than the landowner or the previous landowners. That need for that boulder wall is not, you know, that because of the property, I don't think that we're dealing with that boulder wall right now. That's the only thing we've got to deal with on this, and I don't think that has to do with actions by the landowner or prior landowners.
Okay. Anybody else like to add to that? Marv?
I believe that's, the boulder wall was put there by the owner, landowner himself, and so the landowner created it.
And the trash by prior landowners.
Correct.
Anybody like to add to that? Okay, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than economic considerations? Marv, would you lead us out on that?
Well, it's more in economics because the person, the landowner came in there cleaning that up first, cleaning the trash, and that was at a cost. And then putting this pathway in is at a cost. And here is it, I think it's more than economics because he started wanting to clean this up. And here there were more involved, but he wanted just access to that river. If he would have went through the proper permitting, we wouldn't be here. So it's more than economic considerations.
Anybody would like to add to that?
I'd like to add that my previous answer was a little bit confusing, but, so,
Okay,
I'm sorry, it was right.
no problem. It's good to hear all sides. You're good? Okay. Ready to vote? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. Is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
And Dave?
No,
Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
Dave?
no,
And Marv?
No.
Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Myself is no. Clint?
No.
Dave?
no,
Marv?
No.
And Brent?
No.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
No.
Dave?
no,
Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
And myself is no. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave?
no,
Marv?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. And Clint?
No.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
yes,
Okay, the 5 of the 6 questions were answered negatively. Is there a motion to deny this variance request?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to deny this request.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Aye if you're in favor, nay if you're against. Marv?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
And Dave?
aye.
Discuss with Amy your next steps, or with Land Services?
Right now?
For providing all the information you did,
Okay.
and good luck with your bluff. Best wishes. Okay, next item on the agenda is Robert and Carol Casper, 35756 Logan Lane, Hillman, application for a variance to add on to a non-conforming structure, Richardson Township, Sullivan Lake. Mr. Casper, would you state your name for the record, please?
Yeah, Robert Casper.
Thank you. Amy?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is a variance request to expand a nonconforming structure located in Section 7 of Richardson Township. The ordinance reference for this request is Section 301, 301.6A, and 706.1, and also 706.3. Here's a plat map of Richardson Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And a site drawing also provided by the applicant. Here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in red. And then some oblique imagery of the property. And then here is a shot from the shore. And then here are site photographs taken at the viewing on the 24th of September. Again, the property is in Section 7 of Richardson Township on Sullivan Lake. It is part of Coronada Beach subdivision, which was established in 1917. This is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 50 feet wide and 8,850 square feet. According to the assessor's records, there is a 533 square foot dwelling. The construction date is unknown. It is approximately 34 feet from the lake and 4 feet from the southwest property line. The applicant purchased this property in 2016. The applicant is requesting to remove the existing 10 by 10.5 bedroom from the southwest corner of the dwelling and construct a replacement 10 by 10.5 bedroom on the southeast or road side of the dwelling. They are also requesting to increase the height of the cabin by constructing standard 8-foot sidewalls. And this will result in a gain in volume and overall height, but no increase in livable space. And so here is a drawing of kind of what they're looking to do. So where that X is what they want to remove, and then the red square box is what they want to add. No net gain in bedrooms will occur. Movement of the bedroom to this side of the home will result in a compliant side yard setback on the southwest side of the dwelling. The current impervious surface calculation is 30.15%. 25% impervious surface is allowed. The applicant plans to reduce the width of the driveway by 7 feet to bring the impervious surface down to 24.6%. And then here's the impervious surface calculation with the indication of what will be reduced. At the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the applicant, that the bedroom will be the same size, just relocated to a different spot on the home. The cabin was built before land use controls. The shore impact zone and its significance. There is a letter of map amendment on file for the property, so the floodplain is already addressed. There is a bed in the upper level of the garage, which is not allowed on this parcel and must be removed. The cabin is guttered and water is directed to the sides of the property. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2. Shoreline development, goal D1. And then the comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B. And land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 113 notices were sent and no comment was received prior to the public hearing. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Just for the record also, on September 24th, last Friday, Clint, myself, Dave, and Marv viewed the property. Were you able to get out there, Brent?
Yeah, I was able to get out there this afternoon, and I did see what you were doing out there.
I went out there on Sunday and I went to the address post. I was confused.
Shucks.
So I looked at the wrong property.
Did it make sense? Maybe you want to do it at that one.
Yeah, no, it didn't make sense, and so I wasn't going to walk around too many, and,
No, I'm sorry.
no, it was that, anyway.
Well, that's right, you left early, you
So, Mr. Chair, four members viewed?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
no, all 5 members viewed.
He just said he wasn't at the right
Oh,
one.
you went to the wrong address, I'm sorry. You tried to view. I have to listen more closely to you, Dave, sorry. Okay, 4 members view the property. I'm sorry if I muddied that up. It's clear to you, though.
No, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add to the staff report?
No, I think it's in there that, we have 3 sons that are 6 foot. So the sidewalls, that's part of the reason why we wanted to raise that roof is because, like the front door is 6 foot 2. So if you got boots on or something, it's and I think that's in that report probably, you probably read it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
ahead, Mark.
something that wasn't included with this here, and we had some discussion out there about the building envelope. And Amy, is there any way, shape, or form you could bring up a building envelope? And we were talking about possible alternatives here.
Yep, you bet. Give me just a moment and I'll pull that up.
While we're waiting for that, I just want to review, the nonconformities that you have on your property.
Sure.
It's 50 foot of shoreline, 120 is required for a conforming property. You have 8,850 square feet of property, 30,000 is a conforming lot. The cabin is set back 34 feet from the lake shore. 50 feet is the shore impact zone, and 75 feet is the setback.
Okay.
Side yard setback right now, is it 0, 1 foot? Are you
I
over it,
think-
on it?
No, it's like 4 feet, but there's a huge red oak tree that,
Oh, okay,
that's
okay.
right smack on that line, so it's kind of a weird deal.
yeah. Yeah, lots of that in those smaller lots up
Yeah,
there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so the side yard setback right now is 4 feet and 10 feet is ordinance. You're at 30, over 30% impervious surface and 25% is allowed. And you have a non-conforming accessory structure that's over the 18-foot ordinance.
Yeah, I'm not
for-
sure how that took place. They actually had a little bit of a dispute when that building was put up, is what the neighbor told me. And they actually made it, they shortened that roof line. That's why that building looks like such a squat barn. They had them lower that some, but it's still non-conforming, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So, lots of nonconformities and,
Sure.
which limits, the amount of things you can do on that property. Okay, Amy, are we,
So, Mr. Chair, it looks like there's about a 426 square foot building envelope. When you see the 75-foot setback from the lake, the 30-foot setback from the road, 10-foot side yard setback. So you see kind of that little, it kind of goes over the garage a little bit. That would be the building envelope, which would meet all setbacks.
the accessory structure that's there does meet all setbacks, it looks like?
It appears it does. Oh, actually, it might encroach on the setback from the road right of way, because the back of the garage is right here.
Oh, okay, I see. All right, thank you.
So I'm having a hard time seeing
Right here is the building envelope,
just right there.
right there.
Okay.
It's where all of these lines kind of
Yep.
intersect, and so, yep, right in here is the portion of the property that meets all setbacks.
Could you magically clear that so we could see where the garage is? Okay, can you see that a little better now, Clint?
Yes.
Okay. It's not as easy to magically put it back, is it?
Nope, I'd have to do it over again, but I
No,
certainly
we're
can.
good. We're good.
I think we're good. All right, thank you. So that was something we had discussed at the site Friday, and,
Yes,
yep,
yes.
and that's fairly accurate, correct? Is that how you determine building envelopes, over-the-counter permits, or sometimes have to go out and measure, or?
If it's really close, if a property owner is proposing to be like 75 feet on the dot or very close, and we have high water or low water, we will work off of the ordinary high water mark elevation, and that is part of what we do when we have land use permits, is we go out and verify that, and we work off the ordinary high. And so within a few feet of that is generally what it is.
In the staff report, there was a mention of guest quarters. Does this property qualify for any guest quarters?
No, it does not, Mr. Chair.
And what does it need to do to have guest quarters?
We need to be at least 30,000 square feet.
Okay, at least 30,000 square feet. That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. All right,
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
I'd like to, and you were there, so you're aware of this, but just for the record, we have done nothing to this property. Everything that's there was there when we bought it. So we haven't
Yeah.
broken any of the rules, so-called.
Right, and you have the right to keep everything that's there. It's anything going forward, obviously, it looks like you need a variance for, no matter what you do.
I understand.
Yeah, so, you've owned the property for 2 years?
5.
Oh, 5 years, okay. Yep. Yeah, thank you for reminding us of that.
No problem.
All right, questions for staff, questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
we got a question for Amy. Would Robert be able to maintain that same footprint of the cabin and still go up without moving that side bedroom?
Not without a variance, because the cabin does not meet setback from the lake, an increase in volume is considered expansion as well. So if you went up a second story, that would require a variance as well. That wouldn't be a normal
Okay,
counter
but
permit.
not going up a second story, but continuing the height up from 6 foot to 8 foot?
Yes, that would still need a variance, just because within the ordinance, we allow a change in roof pitch, just to shed water better. You don't need a variance for that. That would result in overall height, but since you're increasing your sidewall height, that under our definition of expansion, that would still need a variance, yes.
Thanks for that.
So if you got creative with pitch and truss rafters, that might be permittable? Or you'd still have an expansion if you
If
raise
the
the ceiling anywhere?
If you're
Yes.
just changing the pitch of the roof, just like, so the reason why that went into effect is because with some of that older construction, you just can't get truss systems that fit that. And we were seeing a lot of variances that people had maybe more of a flat roof and they just needed to pitch it for water, and those were always granted. And so when we rewrote the shoreland ordinance, we put that in where someone, if they just need to change the pitch of the roof, it didn't have anything to do with increasing the sidewall height or the overall volume of the home.
The volume.
Yep, so generally, what's allowed without a variance is just a change in roof pitch where it's just the truss system that's where you're seeing that gain in height. You're not getting any more ceiling height or anything.
Would a vaulted ceiling fall under just the pitch?
It depends.
Sounds like a change in volume to me. All right, did we muddy that up a little more for you, or
No,
was that helpful?
No, you guys gotta realize I'm not against you, I just wanna see what your take is.
Absolutely, yep, yeah, we realize that. All right. Anybody else?
No, we had good discussion out at the meeting. I don't have no questions, I guess.
Okay, then open it up for public input. Is there any public input at this time? I'll ask 3 times. Any public input? Any public input? Hearing no input at this time, we'll close the meeting to the public and carry on with the questions, obviously. We ready for those? That always means yes, when they don't say
Yeah,
anything.
there you go.
I did. I think I did. Sharon said, yes, I did. I put her to sleep a half an hour ago, so I'm not sure if she,
Awesome.
as far as I can recall, yes. Okay, we're going to start out with Brent on the first question. Is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Brent?
I think what Robert's trying to do is make it a usable cabin. My visit out there, I did stand at that front door, and I can't go in that front door. It's not even usable. So I understand trying to increase that sidewall height to be able to walk inside. And I think it's reasonable to have a cabin that's workable. It might have been built in 1920. I don't know what the year of the build on that was, but it certainly was built with less than standard sidewalls to have the height that it does.
I think they're 6 foot too, those walls.
Yeah, so it's odd in that sense, and I think it's reasonable to come before us and request a variance to work and figure that out, so it's a usable cabin.
Okay, anybody else? Go Go ahead, Mark.
Mr. Chair, I would like to add, I think it's reasonable also, what they're trying to do is,
We're looking at harmony and intent of the ordinance.
yeah,
Purpose
well,
of the
okay.
ordinance, not reasonableness, but
Yeah,
harmony
well,
with the
I
ordinance.
think of the ordinance, what I wanted to state, I believe that it's reasonable to go ahead and bring, you listed all the nonconformities, and this would bring the yard setback into conformity. So I think that's making it more reasonable and lowering the impervious surface level into conformity also is reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree with what Marv said. It'll bring it more in harmony by taking away one of our problems that's there, a side yard setback. That'll just make it more in harmony with the general purposes and intent of our land uses.
Okay. I'd like to speak against this as far as harmony. I don't like to, but I think I have to. I agree, one nonconformity would be addressed here, the side yard setback. But at the same time, you're expanding a structure that's 34 feet from the shoreline, well within the shore impact zone. That shoreline is not very natural the way it is. I mean, it's the way Mr. Casper purchased it. By expanding this structure, the structure, the non-conforming property is not going away, probably, more than likely. There'd have to be 4 of these type properties combined in order to get the right square footage of property, 30,000 square feet, and then you'd be up over the 120 feet of shoreline. I realize nonconformities do not go away, but we can improve on nonconformities. We can reduce nonconformities. As you've pointed out, we're reducing one nonconformity, but allowing an expansion in the shore impact zone is, this cabin would be around probably for another 50 years. Maybe if several owners bump their heads, they'll eventually, and we don't allow variances, they'll go to a more reasonable request, which I think there are more reasonable requests available to the landowner. Reasonable for the property, perhaps not reasonable for him, but reasonable for the property. Again, we're not on reasonableness, but reasonable in that they are more in harmony with the intent of the ordinance. Getting out of that shore impact zone for sure, and forever maybe, and improving that shoreline, improving the natural features of the property, improving surface water. Yeah, that's my observations. Anything more on question number 1? Okay, then we'll go to question number 2. Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? I'll start out with that one. Reasonable. It's very reasonable what he wants to do to the cabin, to increase the headroom, to move that bedroom over to a better spot. So he meets the side yard setback. Though that's a reasonable use of the property to have a cabin that's usable. And of course, at the same time, eliminate the guest quarter that he inherited in the accessory structure. But is it reasonable to expand in the shore impact zone? That outweighs the reasonableness of expanding a cabin to a more usable structure, in my mind. So I would say this is not a reasonable request. Go ahead, anybody?
Mr.
Add
Chair,
to that? Go ahead, Clint.
I'd have to disagree a little bit. This is a nonconformity that I think it's never going to change. So, that we're talking about expansion for going up. To me, that don't give any more footprint because, yes, it's still more square footage, but you're just going up. The same amount of water is gonna run off that house if you left the roof alone or change it. The way I look at it is we're taking 105 square feet off of the house and moving it 10 feet farther away from the lake. I think that's a huge step up. Yes, it doesn't make the property in compliance, but I think it's just, he's 34 feet from the water. Now you got 105 square feet of living space that's going to be 44 feet from the water. We're still not in compliance, but we're getting better. So I think it is using it in a reasonable manner. And if you look at the property, he can't even get to his lake side and then it's 4 feet from the property line. There's a tree in the way. He can't even get the lawnmower back there. But I totally think it's reasonable. I kind of commend him for wanting to do something like that, because who in the heck would want to tear a 10-foot bedroom off a house and swing it around and put it on the opposite side? So I think it's reasonable.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mark.
I agree totally with Clint on that statement. And really, the word expansion, I don't think hits the nail on the head on this one, because he is not increasing the footprint. He's just going up slightly. And another point that I want to state, we talked about nonconformities. He's willing to go from a 30% impervious surface down to 24%. So how can we make this better? I know comments were made that it'll probably never go away. You go look along that lake shore, we have numerous nonconformities, but how can we make it better? And I think he's trying to make it better by this.
Better for him or better for the property? That would be I'm not questioning you, Marv, I'm just throwing that back at you, all of you. Better for him or better for the property? The variance is for the property, not for the property owner.
I would say for the property, because like I said, we're moving it 10 feet farther away from the lake. That would be my argument of it. My reasoning, I should say, not my argument, is that you're moving it 10 feet farther away. And I know we're not going to be in compliance, or we're not going to probably ever get that in compliance, but I think that would help the property. You got 105 square feet that is getting 10 feet farther away. So I was going with the property, not the landowner, I guess, to clarify.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, in the county's eyes also, I agree with it's making it better for the property and what Clint stated.
Okay, and I'll throw my plug in one more time. You would be perpetuating a nonconformity. These aren't going to go away unless we start saying no to them. They might not go away in our lifetime, but eventually they might if they are not made more usable, more user-friendly, and the property would be improved, my opinion. Anybody else on number 2? Number 3, character. Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint, would you go first?
I believe so. If you go look up and down there, there's plenty of nonconformities along there. Not saying it's right. That's just the way it is. You're not gonna even notice that he did anything, really, unless you're a next door neighbor, somebody driving by. You're not gonna really, unless they see during construction, they're not gonna really even notice that they took a bedroom off and put it on the south side. It'll be hid from the garage. I just think actually it might even make it better, because you'll see less of the footprint from the lakeside, actually. So I think that it'll maintain the essential character for the locality.
Okay. Anybody want to add to that? Okay. Yeah, the character of the neighborhood is non-conforming. Yeah. Would we add to that or detract from that? Make it better or worse? It's all about the property, not the property owner. Okay, number 4 then, if nothing more on number 3. Number 4 is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property. Mr. Brucher.
Well, I'm gonna have to defer to others on this one. I would say, yes, it is unique to the property. He bought it that way, and I think that the previous comments of, especially Clint made, can be applied to this one as well. That moving that bedroom and the 4 feet from the property line, what he wants to move, I'd say that, yes, it is unique to that property.
Anybody want to add to that?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Clint.
I think we have a very small building envelope here, that he can do anything with. So, you know, he's not able to take that bedroom and move that to the building envelope. So with, I think, that's kind of his practical difficulty, that you ain't gonna be able to take that bedroom, tear it off, and move it to that small building envelope. It's just not, you're gonna have a bedroom, a separate building in there, you know, so. Cause that'd be right in front of the garage, right? I believe so, so, I mean, you ain't gonna tear that bedroom off and move it to that building site. That's the only place that fits in the window. So I think that's where I come up with my practical difficulty, I guess.
Yeah, there's really no option to move a bedroom to anywhere but the main, the residence. There are only one residence per property.
Mr. Chair, can I add to that also?
Yes, please.
One other item to think about, I'll use the word concussion. How many head times did individuals over 6 foot go and bump their heads? I think we got a little bit of safety issue here too.
All right. I would say, you know, an 8,850 square foot property there's not much to work with there. About a little over a fourth of a property. 50 feet of shoreline really restricts the building, but there is a building envelope, though adding on to any structure would probably require a variance. But there are some variances that are much more palatable than others. Side yard setbacks are more palatable than shore impact zone variances. Right of way to the road, much more palatable than, to me anyway, and in most cases, more palatable than the shore impact zone. I don't see a practical difficulty here. It's just a small property with a very small building envelope. Ready for question number 5? Okay. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Starting with you, Marv.
Well, part of it, I got to be honest, is from the previous landowner, but also we can put part of the blame to the county or developer. This cabin was placed before setbacks were there, so when that's the biggest creation I see, and then wanting to keep what you got and make it accessible. So it's probably before setbacks were put here and what was allowed, or that no setbacks were put in place back then.
Good explanation.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
Nothing I could say right here. No, I think that, you know, is it us and this board, we kind of get into this where this was built long before these regulations came into effect. So we come here and we're kind of, like Clint explained, we're kind of like cleanup crew here. And I think that the actions were not created, the landowners did so far, they didn't do anything, you know, when they built it, they weren't out of compliance. And so we're going to come here now and tell them that, you know, that he's got to clean up what has been permitted by the county and allowed way before. So, that's my take on this part too. Kind of an overall view of what we're doing here.
Yep, but we have the current ordinance that we're staring at, not old ordinance. That's my take on that.
We've got we do share opinion, we do sometimes differ in opinions, David.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
back to question number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? I guess I would I'd just like to mention that sometimes when these lots were created at 50 feet or 60 feet, that's created a difficulty for folks to utilize the land moving forward in today's world. So I think it was created by somebody other than just the landowner or prior landowner. It's created by whoever surveyed it and created the lot.
Okay, thank you. All done with question number 5? Number 6. Start with you, Brent, on that one. Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations?
I think it does, being able to utilize a 50 or 60-foot lot, utilization of the structure that's there, being able to improve it so it's usable space, the moving of a bedroom to meet a sideline setback on a non-conforming lot. I think there's a lot more than just economic considerations here.
Anybody else? Okay, yeah, and removal of a structure is, makes an impact on the environment too. The way it is, it's scenic, it's cozy, it's what he bought, it's what he can keep. Are we going to allow him to improve it to meet his personal needs or not? So I'd have to agree that it's more than just about money here. All right, are we ready to vote? Okay. Number 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use owner? Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is no. 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. And Clint?
Yes.
Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowner? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Myself, my answer is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
All the questions were answered in the affirmative. Before we go ahead, I'm guessing we're going to be voting in favor of this, and it's an expansion within the shore impact zone. Would you like to consider any conditions, like stormwater plan, shoreline review, that might help justify your answers?
Mr. Chair, it was stated that the previous cabin has rain gutters on it. I would like that a stormwater specialist would be out there and overlook this here and recommend possibly continuing with the rain gutters and have it diverted away, depending on what that person suggests.
Yep, come up with a stormwater plan with or without gutters, whatever. Yep, okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
the other thing that you may want to consider is that he follows through with the reduction of the impervious surface with the narrowing of the driveway.
Okay. Same person that does the stormwater plan does the shoreline review. Would that be something you'd like to add?
Mr. Chair, I would like to add that.
So we have 3 conditions, or 1 condition with 3 things?
No, 2 conditions. One, the shoreline specialist shall perform a stormwater and shoreline review, and then that the property owner will implement any plan that's put together, and then also the reduction of the width of the driveway to get that impervious surface down to 24.6%.
Are those conditions okay with you? Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve this variance with the conditions that were just read.
I second that motion.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, we'll proceed to vote. Aye if you're in favor, nay if you're against. I'll do roll call, starting out with myself. Nay. Clint?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
And Brent?
Aye.
Thank you.
So your variance is granted. So whenever you're ready, you can come on into the office and pull the permits for the construction,
Okay,
okay?
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
No, 4-1.
Okay. One more piece of paper to shuffle. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck in your renovation.
Thank you all. God bless you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. What do I do next? Can't you read my mind? Next on the agenda is Lowell and Lori Kruger, 2496 White Pine Lane, Motley, application for a variance to add on to a non-conforming structure located in Scandia Valley Township. Applicants will come forward and state your names for the record.
Lori Kruger.
Thank you.
Lowell Kruger.
Thank you. And staff report.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a variance request to expand a non-conforming structure located in Section 17 of Scandia Valley Township. The ordinance reference is Section 301, 301.6, 706.1, and 706.1B, and then also 706.3. Here's a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. Here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. And then some oblique imagery as well. And then here is a photo of the structure from the lake. And then here are photos that were taken at the site viewing on the 24th of September. Again, the property is in Section 17 of Scandia Valley Township on Crookneck Lake. It is part of the 10th addition to Chaminade Park subdivision, which was established in 1963. This is a non-conforming single lot, which means it is less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 85 feet wide and 14,520 square feet. According to the assessor's records, there is a 960 square foot dwelling built in 1964. It is 66 feet from the lake and 4 feet from the west property line. The height of the dwelling is 16 feet. There is also a detached 22 by 20 garage that meets setbacks and a 12 by 8 shed within the shore impact zone. The applicant purchased the property in 2005, and the applicant is requesting the following. One, a 432 square foot second story addition over the east side of the existing dwelling, along with a 288 square foot two-story addition onto the south side of the dwelling with a basement, proposed to be 24.5 feet in height. A 288 square foot one-level addition with a basement onto the east side of the home, and a 728 square foot attached garage. The proposal results in an additional 1,304 square foot increase in the footprint of the home with a 2,600 square foot increase in livable space, including the garage. And I think my math was wrong there. So I think it's, what did you come up with? 22?
About 2,300.
2,300. Most of the additions would be located within the building envelope. And so here is the site drawing. Outlined in blue is the compliant building envelope area on the property. And then what's highlighted in pink would be the portion of the second story addition that is outside the building envelope. The existing garage would be removed, and the current impervious surface calculation is 16.2%. 25% impervious surface is allowed. After the additions, the impervious surface would be 23.7%. And here is that calculation off the survey. At the development review team meeting, staff discussed the following with the applicant, that it would be helpful if the survey showed the building envelope and impervious surface calculation. They should utilize as much of the building envelope as possible. The basement is proposed under the additions. Plans to make the property their primary home. Plans to remove the 252 square foot deck on the lake side of the dwelling. And septic system may need to be expanded to accommodate additional bedrooms. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2. Shoreline development, goal D1. The water plan goals and objectives, surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 273 notices were sent. No correspondence was received prior to the public hearing. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Do the applicants have anything to add at this time? No. Okay. Hey, guys, any questions for the applicant, for staff, or the vast public out there?
Okay, so being it's a nonconformity, they have to ask for variance for all them things, not just that extra addition.
Correct. So because the structure they're adding onto does not meet setback from the lake, it's considered they can replace exactly what they've had, they can repair, they can maintain. The only thing they can't do is expand it. And so even though a lot of the additions are meet setback, it's expansion of that existing structure. So that's what puts that into the variance category.
And how far, I know it's in here, I didn't see,
I believe it's
from the
62
water.
feet.
66 feet.
Okay. Yep, 66, I see that.
Okay. Anybody have anything to add? Any questions?
So as I'm reading this here, or looking at this here, if that second story did not come into that house that far, it would be in the building envelope, but they still would have to ask for variance, correct?
That's correct.
Yep, okay.
Other comments? Yep, this is a non-conforming lot. Were you aware of that when you bought the
Yes.
property? Yep.
No, I didn't know about it then.
Yeah, comes as a shock sometimes. Yeah, you've got 85 feet of shoreline, about 2/3 of a shoreline from being conforming, 14,520 square feet, half of a conformity. You're 66 feet from the lake shore, 75 is the setback. You are out of the shore impact zone, though, that's a positive. Side yard setback looks like 4 feet, if I'm reading the drawing right. 10 feet is the side yard setback. So is continuing the side yard setback part of the variance request? I assume it is.
Mr. Chair, it's bundled in with expansion of a non-conforming structure.
Because it's
non-
non-conforming in more ways than
Right,
one.
it's non-conforming on two fronts.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thanks. All right. what's your plan B? If you weren't to get your variance, what would you do?
Go to Plan A. I just want to clarify, if you look on the map, do you have the map there, or the drawing?
The site drawing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get back to that.
All we're trying to do is go up, we're not changing the footprint, we're just asking to go up on the existing home, gutter to gutter, and then go out south towards the road, if you recall.
Is that the drawing you're looking for?
Yes, yep, and then we had somebody put on the pink, just so it doesn't look like we're going out towards the
Looks
lake.
like it's kind of an addition going out
It's
towards
just
the
going-
lake.
What's
but
that
it's
second
not.
story?
Yep, second
Yeah,
story
it's
straight up
going
on the conforming part of the lake, on the home.
When a garage is attached to a house, that becomes potentially livable space. People can convert to livable space with just a update at soil, or at the land services, correct? And would basically to make sure that sewer conforms, if you're adding bedrooms or whatever. So that's, when I look at this expansion, it's a large expansion on a small property. It's a large building on a small property, and you're not very far out of the building envelope with the whole property, with the whole structure, the original structure even. You're only 9 feet off, I guess. And then, of course, 4 feet, or 6 feet off on the side yard setback. But at the same time, you're
Excuse me,
like
just to
tripling the
clarify.
size of your structure on a
we
very
mentioned
small property.
6
Go ahead.
feet setback, we're gonna be maybe only half, or we're gonna go to the east on that, on the addition. We're 4 feet from the lot line, we're just gonna be, I think it's 20, what is it, 40 feet across. We're gonna be only about half of that, so we'll be over 20 feet from the shore, from the lot line.
Yep, and of course, it's, 25% impervious surface is the maximum. More is better, obviously. More impervious surface, it filters water and reduces contamination of both groundwater and surface water. The more green you have, the better. We're talking a lot less green here with your increased footprint, but still within the impervious surface. But some of it,
Mr. Chair?
yes, go ahead.
So I'm trying to look at this here. In the existing building, it looks like is 4 feet from the property line. The proposed addition, I don't see a distance from the existing property line. What are you, what is that
Do you have
supposed to?
this?
Mr. Chair, it looks like it's 21 feet. One portion of it would be 21 feet, and the other portion would be about 31 feet. If you look at the drawing on your monitor,
Okay, I was looking on
I have a
here.
red one here, do you have, yeah, you have the red.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to see on the monitor than on the paper, even.
So we're gonna go to the east on that, off of the 4 feet, will be approximately, 20 feet off the setback.
Yeah, that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
So what drove you to doing this project, or how you come up with the design and what your needs were?
Well, we've had it 15 years, and our kids were 15 years younger. And we're looking to retire in a couple years and maybe make that more of our main residence. We need space. We have 2 bedrooms and 2 sons, so one has to take the lower level. It's not a legal bedroom down below. So we'd like to have more livable space,
Yep.
above, and kind of,
Could you clarify, you've got 2 bedrooms now?
yeah,
And you're planning on how many bedrooms? I didn't see that anywhere.
2.
2 bedrooms.
Still 2?
So we're gonna have, on that upper level will be a bedroom.
so you have 2 bedrooms now. When the project is over, how many total bedrooms?
Yes.
3.
There's
Okay.
gonna be a second bedroom down and then the upper level.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, Clint, if I interrupted you. He doesn't
And-
look like he's forgiving me.
I'll mention too, the kids, our children no longer live at home, so it'll be two of us there, but, you know,
90%
the
of the
children
time.
coming to visit, so as far as, you know, septic use and that type of thing, it's not like we're bringing in a larger family to live full-time.
Yep.
But the variance goes with the property. It's, you know, so you have to look into the future too, how the property will be used. No other questions? We'll open up to the public then. There is no public, but we'll ask 3 times anyway. Are there any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll close it to public input. So, we're ready for the questions. Oh, I've got my name checked as the first person to start out. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Well, I sound like a broken record, but reduce conformities, eventually eliminate. We know the elimination isn't going to happen. Reducing is something that is within our control, possibly, at least not expanding. One nice thing about this residence, it is out of the shore impact zone, and most of the addition is in the building envelope, which is the intent of the ordinance. Those ordinances are there to, again, protect the shoreline, protect water, protect natural resources, and very close to meeting that. It looks to me like water runoff, if not controlled now, could be controlled with a stormwater plan. And a review of the shoreline, I think there could be some improvements made there. So I think those are things that might bring us more into harmony. Those, as conditioned, might bring us more into harmony with the intent of the ordinance. Less than 25% impervious surface. You're removing the deck.
Yes.
Yes,
What are you planning to replace that with?
if we do, we'd put like pavers, nothing permanent, they said, so, like, could we use like pavers? I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, what is allowed, Amy? Could you review that?
As long as your impervious surface doesn't exceed 25%, you could put a patio, and that can be, start 50 feet from the water, but we'd pay attention to your impervious surface calculation at that point. And, but I think your impervious surface calc right now is not including a patio, so you have a very, very little to work with impervious surface.
We
'cause
wouldn't
you're at-
have to if it.
Because
you
you're
know, if it-
flirting with that maximum impervious surface, so it wouldn't allow a whole lot of square footage for a patio.
And I wouldn't look for a big patio, or I guess we would just have to work within what would be allowed at that point.
You do have another structure that's within the shore impact zone, that utility shed. You are adding a lot of square feet in your house and basement and garage, so I'm assuming a fair bit of that is available for storage. Have you thought about that utility shed, moving it
We could
back
remove
at
it
least, or
if-
removing it?
If necessary.
If that were to be a condition, that would be something you'd be open to?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so those two things, again, help me to answer more towards the affirmative in question one, that the removal of the deck, the removal of that utility shed, and a very small landing in replacing the deck. So, my response, I'm sorry, I took a lot there. Go ahead, anybody like to add to that?
I would just concur that I agree with most of the stuff that you've stated.
Most, come on, Glenn.
Hey, that's a step up, ain't it?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
No, but just hold on one second.
Sorry.
It does make it a lot easier with some of the things we just discussed. I think that this helps bring it closer to harmony because it is so close. It's too close to the lake, but you're a lot closer to being back on the setback than a lot of these, okay? You know, that don't mean it's right, but it just helps that with some of them conditions that we could possibly put on, it helps us answer this one, yes, so that's it.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the points you brought up there. You know, you covered both sides of everything, and I also appreciate the applicant's flexibility. So that's all I got to say.
Mr. Chair, as we looked at that shed there, it looks like that is right near the neighbor's property.
Yes.
So that doesn't meet the setback there. And I was wondering what your conditions were, Mr. Chair, but once you clarified them, I totally agree with you this time.
I shouldn't do that. But we still have 4 more questions to answer.
We need a moment here, I think we do.
Moment.
We're bonding. Okay, question number 2. Are you ready for question number 2? Okay, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Clint, would you begin?
I believe so, you know, with their willingness to, you know, they already stated in their packet that they were going to remove that deck in the lakeside. Now in further discussion, if we'd move that storage shed out of there, that's not only going to help with some of your setbacks and then being too close to the lake, but it also helps with your impervious surface also. So, and when you look at the design, okay, yes, they're going to go up. They're still in the shore impact, not the shore impact zone, but they're too close to the lake. But when you look at the biggest part of this design, they are making a great effort to keep that in the building envelope. And we're gonna tear a garage out, so they're not really adding. So I think it's in a reasonable manner. I know we're approaching, kind of right to the max for our impervious surface, but I think with some of these things that they're willing to do, that just helps get that a little bit closer, and so you ain't quite right at the limit. So right. I think that just makes it a little more reasonable, so.
Okay, anybody else like to add to that? Yeah, I guess I'd just add that it is reasonable use of the land to have a dwelling that accommodates your needs and meets setbacks mostly. I guess if you're 20 feet from the east shore side and 4 feet from the west side, 20 plus 4 is 24, divided by 2, you're 12 feet, so I don't know. That's the best I can do on being rational on that one, but reasonable use of the property. Go ahead.
One more thing I just wanted to comment, because, we said in a few of these that it goes with the land. So something to think about is if they do this project, it's a non-conforming property, but if they do this project, it stays with the land. It's going to be pretty hard for the next one that comes through and want to build onto this. So if anything, it kind of protects it. To a certain extent. Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, to a certain extent, it actually protects this property.
That's a good point.
By doing what they're doing. So I just remember, because, you always say goes with the land. Mm-hmm. I just think that this particular one would help protect this property, I think, for future development, so.
It rearranges things in a better manner. Yep. Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay, number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Dave, would you start with that?
Yeah, we were out there and I looked at it and I walked around and looked at the neighborhood and I think it fits right in. And I think that looking at your plan here, it maintains the essential character of the neighborhood. And again, how many were sent out and we had no,
Over 200.
over 200 letters sent out and no objections. I would think if there were any objections, we would have heard about it. So I think that just answers the question right there.
It's hard to object when your backyard is full of nonconformities. But I agree, Dave, no objections. Yeah, I agree.
I disagree with that.
I'm not even sure what you're disagreeing with,
I
but
mean,
I agree with you.
know,
That you should disagree.
there's always somebody that doesn't want something to happen, and we didn't see,
True.
and it doesn't make any difference what is going on, you
Yeah.
know. No, I think it maintains,
273 to 0.
Yeah,
I think it kind of settles that, yeah.
yeah, I've been at this too long. I've got a hardcore nature.
Okay.
No, it's hard to, if you complain, you draw attention to yourself sometimes and create enemies and whatever. So, yes, but I appreciate that nobody responded. Yes, both structures on either side of them are more non-conforming than theirs. Makes them the best non-conformity on the block. And it's going to be a very attractive upgrade. It will fit right into the neighborhood, in my opinion. Ready for number 4? Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv, we're starting with you.
Well, it's unique because I shouldn't say it's unique because we've got a lot of non-conforming lots right along there. But that's still, non-conforming makes it unique in some aspects. And then the house placement where it is right now was 4 feet from the neighbor's property line, which makes it a little bit unique. And then them wanting to build, remove the garage and build onto this and put it in the building envelope, I think, I don't know if it makes it unique, but I'm just reinstating what they're hoping to do.
Anybody else? Do we have a reason yet? Not really. Okay,
I'll kind of go back to what Brent said before, with the lot size being done, before they had it. If you look at it, who knows what happened back then? Maybe it was 75 feet away. Lakes change. We don't know when that house was built, being it's so close to meeting the lake setback, or when it was built, there wasn't a lake setback. And who knows what the side property line, the upgraded surveys that we've had done. I think just with some of that past placement of this, with some uncertainties, gives it the practical difficulty that they're forced with here. If it was 4 feet over and 6 feet over, it would be complying. Still be non-conformity for lot size, but they'd meet their setbacks, So I think I think just what prior things that are out of their control and out of our control have created this this practical difficulty.
Mr. Chair, I didn't think about what Clint stated, but it does make sense. How many of these surveys were done and shifted property lines? And that was, I totally agree with that statement. I think we've seen it over and over, and maybe even our own property that way is shifted.
I'll add to that why I said that survey is because personally, we have a hunting cabin in Orr, Minnesota, and that property has been a parcel for 100 years, the actual 35-acre parcel. My father-in-law's owned it for 35 years. His 30th year of owning it, they resurveyed the whole road, like for 50 miles, and the property line goes right through the middle of our cabin. And that was just from bad surveys from when it was original. We, according to what we had for records, we were 60 feet from the property line with the front of the cabin, not the middle, the front of the cabin. And then ended up going right through the center. So that's why some of these surveys sometimes, I don't know, I guess in here it probably says when the house was built, I don't know, but.
1964.
So I would say there was probably some problems with surveys in the 60s, I would guess. So that's why I come up with the survey thing. It's just some personal things that I've dealt with.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we farm, and I haven't got one property line that's not in dispute.
Oh, man.
Is that you just try to work through these things. We got an irrigation pivot that somebody wants to take part of that property. Well, hey, it is not gonna happen, but we'll leave that one alone.
Just going to go to the applicants. Non-conforming lot as a practical difficulty is what the applicant stated. And we're just going to try to point out to you that we're trying our hardest to come up with a practical difficulty, a small lot. Ordinance, they do not present practical difficulties, but what the board has presented here, I think can be justified as a practical difficulty, even though I'm saying there is none here. No, it's a small lot. A 960 square foot house fits on it, fits with the lot size. A larger house is a personal want and creates its own practical difficulty. So I assume we're ready for number 5. Actions of the landowner or previous landowner.
I think that's fine.
Starting out with you, Brent, sorry.
Yeah, is the need for the variance created by other actions other than the landowners or previous landowners? I think so. We're back to that whole land being surveyed at 85, an 85-foot lot, 14,500 square feet. To do anything with this property is going to require a variance moving forward, and that's not necessarily created by the landowner, it's created by some other thing. And that house on an 85-foot lot was built 1964. It could have been the builder that built it too close to the lot, not knowing or having a survey line in 1964, just a by sight, oh, we'll build it right here, when they could have moved it over another 6 feet, it'd be a whole different story today. So was that created by the landowner or the prior landowners? Maybe it was by the previous landowner, maybe it was by the builder, maybe it was by just eye-sighting it up on a lot line. So when you only got 85 feet to work with, errors can happen.
Anybody want to add to that? Actions of the landowner or previous landowner. 2005 purchase, purchased too small of a lot to accommodate future needs. Another question that's hard to come up with a positive answer. I'll leave it at that. Number 6, starting out with me. Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than economic considerations? I'm not sure. Definitely building on site is cheaper than buying a new, larger lot that would accommodate their needs better. Anybody like to add to that?
I think it does involve, the practical difficulty involves more than just economic considerations here. And I don't think that the option that you proposed is practical.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to also add, what makes this a little more palatable is the conditions of removal of the shed, with the conditions of removal of the deck. And then by doing that, they're considering what they can do to make this a better piece of property, and they're looking at it as a whole and willing to work with us.
Okay. Any additions to number 6?
Mr. Chair, I kind of agree with, a little bit, yes, this is cheaper to do this than go purchase a new lake home. So yeah, you see that, but that's part of it. But, I just think what I kind of explained in my practical difficulty and some of them things, just trying to use their property, I think it's more than just the money, but definitely part of it is the money, but there's more to it than that. So that's just all I'd like to add.
Okay. All right, thank you. We ready for the vote?
Okay, I got one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we have enough? Is my practical difficulty good enough? I mean, is that?
Depends on which way you vote.
That's why I'm asking if it would.
We don't get that question very often. No.
Just so you know, the hardest thing about this job, we could totally it's not emotional, we could totally want to pass something for anybody. If we can't find a practical difficulty, it fails it. So it has nothing to do with what the applicant does or what we do. If we can't find one, that's what, so that's why I'm working hard on this practical difficulty thing. So just so you understand, some people think it's emotional and we want things to pass sometimes, and sometimes we can't just because of some of the things that we have to do. But
Excuse me?
Did we discuss the viewing for this property?
Oh, on the record, who you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I don't think we did. Viewing on the 24th. Yeah, Dave, you were there at that one?
Sir.
Marv and Clint and I, and
And I did, Mr. Chair, view that property on Friday at 3 o'clock.
okay. All right. For the record, we were there. All right, before we vote, I guess I'd like to add, review the conditions. I think the removal of the deck, I think we're all on board on that. Removal of the utility shed, we're all on board with that. Keeping a very close watch on, we don't need to condition it, but on impervious surface, you know how important that is. I think also, adding a lot of roof here, a lot of watershed and a complicated roof line at that, I think for sure, and again, within the setback to the lake. I think a stormwater plan and a shoreline review plan are definitely in need here. From my observation on the property, it sure looks to me like water can be directed away from the lake and towards the road, either with holding ponds or, shouldn't call them holding ponds, but you know what I mean. Water retention areas, guttering, landscaping. So,
Swales, yeah.
so those conditions are amenable to you? Okay. All right, let's vote. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? First, my answer is yes. Clint?
yes, with the conditions.
And Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes, and Clint.
Yes.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Starting with Brent,
Yes.
myself is yes, Clint,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and Marv.
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? I'm first, my answer is yes, Clint,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Marv,
Yes.
and Brent.
Yes.
Okay, all the questions were answered in the affirmative. Is there a motion to grant this variance request?
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion with the 3 conditions we discussed regarding the stormwater plan. Removal of the shed, removal of the deck.
I would like to second that.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. We'll start off with me. My answer is aye. Clint?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
And Brent?
Aye.
Motion carries. Your variance has been granted
Thank you.
Congratulations.
after much hair pulling, at least a little.
Can I get some clarity on the, we got 3
Conditions.
conditions, remove the shed, not an issue, the deck, shore, and then what was the other?
So you will need to reach out to our staff shoreland specialist and arrange a site visit. And he will review the stormwater movement on your property or the shoreline condition. And then he'll come up with some improvements that need to
And
be
they'll
made
help
and you'll
us
need
on
to
that
implement
stormwater
those.
plan?
Yes.
Okay. What, do you have any idea what some of that might, just to give us an idea?
Depends on it'll be maybe guttering, rain gardens. He's gonna look to see how the stormwater moves on your property and, what makes sense as far as for catchment of that, so
Okay.
it goes across the landscape rather than towards the lake.
Right.
So every property is just a little bit different depending on the slope and how that moves.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, something we didn't do, we typically put a date on these here. Do we need to do that?
You'd have to open it back up.
Okay.
We'll condition it with the permit.
And when can we, do I understand there's 2 years from when we apply?
So you need to act on your variance within 2 years, and we consider acting on your variance as pulling your permits. Once you've applied for your permits, then your permits are valid for 2 years. So depending on how you time that, you could have up to 4 years to get the project done,
Okay.
okay?
You know, another option you have on a stormwater plan, you could hire somebody to design one, and
And
of
then
course,
have-
you'd have to submit it.
Yep, and then have our shoreline specialist review it, so,
Okay. We got some
Same,
options.
same thing with the shoreline.
yep.
Okay, so we just call the city and say we're ready to.
No, you currently call the county, us,
County.
and then you'll need to do your permits. So the next step is pulling the permits for the actual construction. And if you don't have a current septic system inspection, you'll need to have one on file.
I do, I think, do you have that on file?
I can check during business hours.
Okay.
If you want to give us a call.
I did have that checked, and I didn't get the record to bring, but I did have, he said it's compliant. and
Sounds good.
everything.
Yeah, we can check that.
Thank you.
Make sure you call Land Services in Morrison County.
Yeah.
Land,
Services.
Whenever you have a question about land use, call Land Services before rather than after.
We learned that.
yeah, we learned that.
And recommend that to your neighbors, please. That'd be really helpful to us. We don't have any fun with after-the-fact things.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ready?
Next item on the agenda is new business, old business. Approval of the September 14th minutes. I reviewed the minutes, saw nothing wrong. Anybody see anything there?
I move to accept those minutes.
Okay, I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Accepted as presented. New business, old business?
Mr. Chair, I don't think I've got any of either. We do have an agenda. We will have an agenda. Those requests are just rolling in. So I think we're backed up to the last October meeting, I think, already. So we know we've got agendas For those, I've been actively managing your agenda to make sure that you don't have too many on or things that are gonna take a really long time. So we have pushed some to other meetings, so you have a more reasonable agenda, so.
Would be nice if you could plan them so the viewings didn't involve 3 hours of driving.
I know, that I can't help with all that
Amy,
much.
may I ask a question about an upcoming permit request?
Yeah.
Is that appropriate?
You certainly can, we can't discuss it as far as how you're gonna vote or get
No.
into the weeds, but
No,
yeah.
no, no, I'm not gonna get too far off. I see that Monroe
Rezone?
rezone is back up again. Now, it's public, that the county board did vote it down
Correct.
before. Now, the question I would ask is that, is he coming back with something different that would change this?
I'm gonna be writing the staff report here very soon, so you'll see in the staff report, and I'll also give you part of the history I'm gonna give you is really what has happened before. From what I can tell, nothing has changed. I can't deny someone's right to ask and ask again and ask again and ask again. So,
Is that the one that went to court?
no, no, this is a rezone request, that was denied by the county board, and he's requesting, he's
I was
coming
an
back in.
alternate on the vote, their original vote, and I was the only one that had voted against it at that time. Then it went to the county board, and the county turned it down. But I know that since this request has come up, I've been contacted by several parties about
And so
this.
if that's influencing the way you vote, you need to make sure that you get that on the record, and be very careful about what you discuss and how you discuss it, outside of the public hearing. I guess that would be my advice as well.
I mean,
Look at it with fresh eyes.
I've had the town board, contact me already too, and I'll make certain that is part of the public record. There's nothing.
Yep, you just wanna make sure anything that you're, that you're making a part of the record if it's influencing the way you're voting.
Namby maple syrup application.
Yeah. How about that, we gonna have anything for planning and zoning pretty soon? I think the next one.
Yeah, that
there is,
rezone
yeah,
is
yeah.
planning commission, and you're also gonna have an ordinance amendment as well, so that's next time, right? Yeah, so you're gonna have that rezone request and an ordinance amendment for planning commission, and then do we have a board of adjustment then too? How many, do you remember? 2, so you're gonna have 4 items.
Then Watnick's must be the next time.
Oh, there's 4? I thought there was only 3, one board of adjustment.
Oh, we had one poll. They just pulled their request today.
Did that get,
One board of adjustment and one.
2 planning commission. Yeah,
was that published twice in the paper, or? Because, just was.
Because the viewing was not published.
So that Watnick one, was that a complaint too, or was that you guys caught, or?
complaint. Yeah, so you'll get the staff report for that
So
one?
it's funny. I told my wife about that, cause goes to that crap. And I says, won't be long, I'm sure that something will happen with that one, cause they can't be doing that out there. And the very next day, we got our stuff, and it said,
What is he, I didn't read that, what is he doing out there? 'Cause
it's like a craft business.
It's established a limited rural business, a store, a boutique, a
he's got
clothing.
more things going, that guy.
Yeah. So, look at all that.
You'd think he'd know better being a sheriff deputy, right?
We're getting over the edge. We're on the record, yes. I have no control over these guys, Sharon. Your turn next time. Okay,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I second that.
Whatever.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn passes. We're adjourned.